Ladies and gentlemen, members of the jury, members of the Roll the Tape film crew. So a lot of people are talking about Jaron Boots Ennis versus Teofimo Lopez. In a recent interview that Eddie Hearn, the promoter of Matchroom Promotions, and of course, the promoter of Boots, was asked a question about Boots' next fight and moving up to 154 pounds. And Eddie Hearn told the interviewer, and I think it was Fight Hub, don't quote me on that, but I think it was Fight Hub, that Boots wants to stay at 147 to unify and become undisputed. And that's that. Eddie Hearn also stated that if the big fights at 147 cannot materialize for whatever reason, that will allow Boots to compete with the rest of the champions in the 147-pound welterweight division, then of course they will explore other options to move up to 154 pounds. And then it was mentioned that Teofimo Lopez asked for the fight at 147. And what did Eddie Hearn think about that? And Eddie Hearn basically agreed with the interviewer that would be a big money fight. Obviously, because of the personality that Lopez brings to the table, the credibility that Teo, we're going to call him Teo, bring to the table, the fact that Teo has sponsorship deals that will obviously want to join the sweepstakes and receiving publicity and advertisement for a fight of this magnitude. Eddie Hearn also mentioned that the fight can happen in Philly again. Then the interviewer made a reference about Madison Square Garden, which is a venue that Teofimo is extremely experienced in competing at. And he has a heavy fan base and demographic that is targeted there. Obviously, the Puerto Rican community. But the question I have is, what does Boots get in exchange for fighting Teo? It's basically the same question that I asked about Boots fighting Virgil Ortiz. What incentive does Boots gain for fighting and or even winning against Teofimo? Because here's the backlash that possibly can come with Boots fighting Teo. Let's say Boots fight Teofimo. It's a good fight because both have different demographics and their own fan base. And of course, it's a African-American and or black versus a Puerto Rican. And any demographic versus black and or African-American usually sell, depending on who that black and or African-American fighter is and the star power that they generate. With that being said, though, the backlash that will come to Boots, when he beats Teo would be, well, Teofimo was a 140-pound former champion, and he moved up in weight, and Boots was supposed to dominate him, or Boots was supposed to at least win against the smaller man. That's what one of the negative consensus would be from the boxing community. And let's say Teofimo gets in the ring and Teofimo beats Boots. There's also another negative consensus that will be generated and will reverberate all across the boxing community. And that is, well, Boots lost to the naturally smaller man. And this is proof that he's not ready for anyone in the 154-pound division, nor is he ready for Terrence Crawford, and nor was he ready for Virgil Ortiz. And guess what? Teofimo will become the new IBF world champion in the welterweight division. And so my take on it is very simple. With all due respect to Teo obviously want big money fights. So I suggest what Teo should do is compete in his weight class, because there are a lot of fighters that Teofimo can actually fight, make money with, and possibly become a world champion again. And maybe he should go fight those guys. Right? But on the flip side of that coin, though, I think at this point with Eddie Hearn and with Boots and the whole team, the agenda should remain the same, irregardless of who calls Boots out. The objective is becoming undisputed in the welterweight division. I believe, and I'm sure they are, but I believe that Eddie Hearn should be communicating and negotiating with all of the other champions in the welterweight division. Now, here's where things get a little bit tricky, because in interviews, even as recent as 2 days ago, Eddie Hearn is literally conducting an interview with an interviewer. I don't know the UK channel's name, because it's a UK YouTube channel or network station in the UK. He was interviewing Eddie Hearn, and he was going back and forth with Nigel Benz. I'm not Nigel Ben, I'm sorry. I think it was Chris Eubank. I think it was Chris Eubank's manager. They were going back and forth, of course, obviously on behalf of Conor Ben. And Chris Eubank, manager, was talking about a 55-45% split. Eddie Hearn was saying 50-50, and they both could not come to terms. They were just talking in the media to each other, and it was basically the interviewer who were placing a microphone in each of their faces every time each of them said something. But even before the manager walked up, Eddie Hearn made a reference that Conor Ben can compete at welterweight to fight Mario Barrios. And so I have an issue with that because at this point, we know what the objective is for Boots. So instead of being in the media talking about Conor Ben fighting Mario Barrios, who is the other world champion in the division, why not target Mario Barrios to fight Boots? Brian Norman Jr. is a world champion. Stanionis, world champion. And even Mario Barrios. Those are the three fights that we want to see Boots compete in if the agenda is for Boots to become undisputed. And I think at this point, everybody should be focusing in on 2025, champion versus champion, to unify the titles at the welterweight division. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Now, there is time to get this done. Because check this out. As we know, in January, February, March, and May, fights are already lined up. Even at the end of this month, fights are lined up going into 2025. The last fight that we know of right now that's inked is a Canelo fight. Who is he fighting? We don't know. But we know in May he's fighting someone because we know that month is reserved for Canelo Alvarez in boxing. And then you're talking Sebastian Fundora and Errol Spence. We don't know when they're going to be competing in the ring for 2025. So I said all that to say somewhere in 2025, Boots have to be squeezed into the 2025 schedule to fight another world champion at the welterweight division. You know what? I'm doing way too much talking. Don't take my word for it. Roll the tape.